Okay, I'm recording. So with diverticulitis, the diet that they're, so they have to be careful of too much fiber. But on the other hand, so it's very odd on the other, because you don't want things stuck there. On the other hand, you need the bowels constantly moving. You don't want anything stuck, so you kind of need the fiber. So it's an odd, each patient has to find you know the the fiber amount that and I'm not sure how correct that is, but they're warned against um too much fiber. So that's all I really know about the diet for diverticulitis. In terms of acupuncture, uh, I don't have anything that's totally clear, but here are now you usually talking, we're usually talking about the descending colon, usually. Okay. Although they can happen in other places. So so if in your case it's somewhere else, let me know and I can. So I would look at the possibilities of spleen 9, liver 8, inner yin. And the other thing is I would look at is large intestine 1, 2 is an option. Okay, so those are the things that that kind of grab my attention as, okay, these are points I should check. Okay. And most likely on the left side. Especially inner yin specifically is related to the colon. Very windy. So so that's pretty much all I have to, I think that's pretty much all I have to say on it. On the back, probably L5 Watto, and also, the outside the large intestine shoe, there, the dimple, the Yao Yan, the lumbar eye, which I use for, needle towards the legs. When it's, as blood supply for the legs and stuff like that, but needle straight in for large intestine issues. So that's pretty much all I have to say about it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I did hear, like to avoid, which is much the same as the fiber, really, I suppose. Nuts and seeds and, those small.
Yeah, I mean, anything that supposedly can get stuck in a cavern
Yeah.
is basically, so that's kind of where it gets to be, it gets to be a problematic diet conceivably. Because you have to avoid, it's basically sort of, it's a diet that suggests something like, I'm exaggerating, eat applesauce, pureed applesauce and pudding the whole, your whole life, because that's kind of like the safer route. Nothing will get stuck because everything moves. And because you don't want anything stuck because of the possibility of then inflammation and then infections, and then possibly cancers growing and stuff like that. But how realistic that is versus, like, this is just the one of the problems with diets that are given by MDs for conditions like this is that they have some imagination about it, and they're worried about specific fatal, or bad possibilities, but they don't know doesn't mean that they know anything about diet. So it's like, what do you do with that? So that's what, and obviously you want a relatively anti-inflammatory diet. Because this is a situation that can get inflamed very quickly.
Yeah.
So you kind of want to prep your body up so that you're less inflammatory, like that you're ready to handle an inflammation very easily. But other than that, I don't really have much to say. And yeah, and so then if you talk about anti-inflammatory, so yeah, you can also talk about stomach 41 towards gallbladder 40. So that's something else to consider. But otherwise, the things that come up, kind of like automatically for me for diverticulitis to try are spleen 9, liver 8, inner yin, possibly large intestine 1 and 2. If it's not, if it's somewhere else, I would consider small intestine. Small intestine 1 or 2 or small intestine 3 could be useful. But if it's descending colon, much more likely large intestine 1, 2.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
great. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Anything else?
Can I just mention in terms of an anti-inflammatory diet that one of the main things is to make sure they're not eating a lot of chemicals. I don't know how much that is an issue in Ireland or Norway versus the US, but it's a tremendous problem in the United States to try to find food that doesn't have horrible chemicals added to it, you know, genetically modified foods and all kinds of additives and preservatives and pesticides. And, you know, so I just tell patients, you know, eat the way people ate 500 years ago, you know. I think that really helps. And then other anti-inflammatories like, you know, the turmeric and cumin seed oil and that kind of thing too can be really helpful.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Camille.
So, yeah, so what, you know, what I would do is, you know, like, because often, so what they, you know, because they may not want to do a lot of, say, dark leafy greens as fiber. So what you do is do it in as soup that's totally liquefied, even though, you know, there's no way you're going to get it as total liquid, you know, there's always pieces, but it's a little less so, you know, that there's less of a chance of, you know, just like with the seeds, that things get stuck, you know, mechanically, by liquefying. You know, so some of the foods that, you know, and by the way, IBS is the same thing there, you know, like a lot of IBS patients, you know, they can't take fiber, you know, that's chewed, but they will be able to take it sometimes with, you know, if it's liquefied. So,
I suppose juicing would be good as well.
juicing is yeah, I mean, the thing what you have to watch about juices is, you know, like, again, you know, I don't want to sound too Chinese, but juicing is cold, so to speak. So, you know, you have to make sure that they can act, that they are able to you know, because often what happens with juicing is that, yeah, they're really good for you, but then the person may not be able to fully digest. So maybe, you know, adding ginger to juice would be a good
Yeah.
but yeah, juicing would be a good, I think would be a good idea. So I don't know what the official word is, but I would say juicing would be a good but how many people can do a juice diet for a long time? It's not quite the best advice to give people. So all I'm saying is that, you know, they can get fiber with that's more liquid, rather than, you know, with seeds and you know, with particles, that there's a danger, you know, so that, you know, you can do that to compensate. That's all.
Yeah. Great.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else? Quiet today.
Is the ball in your hands?
Sorry?
Is the ball in your hands? Is there a case you'd like to share? Or cases?
The ball is never in my hands. So the ball is always in other people's hands. I just catch it.
Got it.
That's my job, is to catch the ball.
Got it.
But, you know, it's hard because, you know, now with the pandemic and people seeing less patients and stuff, and, you know, and we've been doing it for a long time, you know, over, you know, a long time. So there's a limit to how many questions and things people have at some point. So that's why it's you know, it's on a lull.
Well, okay, I'll have a question, and this will not be a short question, I'm sure.
Okay.
So so last time we talked about how the pelvic girdle was analogous to the maxilla, and and for me the sphenoid.
Yeah, the
Um,
sphenoid.
do you see? I would be interested in a discussion of analogous areas of the body.
Oh, wow. Okay, let me.
And as I said, this could be a question over several times. You could pick one for today and probably discuss one, and that would be enough.
Okay, well, I would pick the one that we started because it's not always so. I mean, yeah, and I mean, of course, if you talk to the tan people, they have zillions of these,
Right. But
constantly.
I'm talking more the Avi perspective.
Yeah, so I don't have huge numbers of those, and they don't come up. I mean, I can't rattle them off like the tan people can. So let's just start with, and also because I'm less looking at things that reflect, like they're literally looking at reflections as if it was a mirror, like holographic images. And I tend not to sort of look at that, although that does exist. So I'll give you my radical one because it doesn't come from that. So, for example, large intestine 15, which is a point we use for detox. Okay, the name is Jianyu, and supposedly it says something about the shoulder. There's the shoulder character, but then there's also a character that suggests that it's supposed to be a region in China, but it's really it's a region in China that has a certain kind of monkey. Okay, so it's really it refers to the monkey. So, on the one hand, you can say large intestine 15, in the shoulder, monkeys have a very large usage of the shoulder joint, so it kind of makes sense that it refers to a monkey. But the other thing, because we do use it for detox, so two things. Number one, if you take the deltoid kind of has the same shape of the liver. Okay. I mean, you have to turn it around for it to be the shape of the liver, granted, but it's still, and so that will be very much like, and by the way, also the shape of the FNI, and that will be very much like a Richard Tan sort of ideology. And then, but the other thing is from the name of the monkey. Okay, monkeys, they swing around like they're if we were doing it, it would be like we're intoxicated. Oh, very nice. So. It's kind of like it suggests by name, like that it's a point that has to do with intoxication. Like one is intoxicated like a monkey or something like that. Okay, so, and that's not a part of, I mean, this is not what originally, nobody said, use large intestine 15 for detox because of these attributes, because it looks like the liver, or the name has a monkey in it. This is just stuff that I made up. Okay, so I'm just saying that there's ways to do these things. So in terms of reflections, the easiest reflections for me right off the bat is because we don't have a lot of them, is the horizontal bones. So you have one of so that's where you have the pubic bone is one, the hyoid bone is another. So stomach 9 and kidney 11 have a reflection against each other. Stomach 30 and stomach 13 have a reflection against each other, even though because stomach 13 so you have another horizontal bone here, the collarbone, right? So stomach 13 and stomach 30, and that has an extra reflection in the sense that they're opposite sides of the torso, because stomach 9 is already not on the torso, so you can't say that stomach 9 and kidney 11 are opposite sides of the torso. Okay, but stomach 13 fixing stomach 30 and inguinal area does have mirroring that the tan people talk about. And then you have the other, kind of horizontal bone, which would be your sphenoid or maxilla, or the jaws, the jaw bones, or the whatever, the skull, front. So you have a connection there. So that's kind of like the quick way for me to the quick answer that I have of things that reflect. Otherwise, I have to really think about it, because a lot of the things that I say reflect each other, that I, come from names. So for example, just, like when we talked about large intestine 1 and 2, for the large intestine. So yes, it's on the large intestine channel, and it also by name. So this is not a reflection that I can see physically, but I'm gathering that somebody else possibly did, because the first points on the large intestine channel. Okay, so the first one is called something with Shang. I'm not sure, Shangyang or something. One of them is on the lung, one of them is on large intestine. But the second one is called the second space, Erjian, and the third point is called Sanjian, the second space and the third space. And I think this idea to explain it is it's the second and third point on the channel is kind of, I wouldn't, well, I was going to say it's absurd, but I don't think it's absurd as much as it doesn't make sense. Because if we say that points were generated over time, and we're specifically saying that the Chinese never numbered them on purpose, then why would suddenly these 2 points be named second and third? I think it actually refers more to the second and third space of the intestines. And then I try to see what happens when, and because, so I'm just suggesting that large intestine 1, 2, and 3 have a strong resonance with the 3 sections of the intestines, although you could say the intestine has 5 sections. Because if you take the rectum as a separate and the ileocecal, as a section, so that's kind of like 2 on the front end and the back end, and then 3 ascending, transverse, and descending in the middle. And you have a similar phenomenon in the small intestine channel. That small intestine 2 and 3 are called before and after. Small intestine 1 has the character of marsh in it. So again, suggesting different sections of the small intestine, which again has 3 parts, with it's the duodenum that comes first, right? The duodenum is really not as small, is the small intestine officially, but in terms of absorption, the duodenum is almost like a continuation of the stomach to some extent. It's a big marsh. It's just a big mess that happens, and then it's when it passes on to the jejunum, the ileum and the jejunum, that the most of the actual absorption into blood vessels, I believe, happens. So so you have like a before and after, again suggesting sections. Okay. So again, small intestine 1, 2, and 3 can relate to the small intestine, just like large intestine 1, 2, and 3. So it's not a reflection in that sense. It's a reflection through point name. And because I tend to choose either 1 and 2 on both channels, or 3. And on the small intestine channel, small intestine 3 tends to be more popular. On the large intestine channel, large intestine 1 and 2 tend to be more popular than just 3. And the reason why is because I already have the habit of large intestine 1, 2, or small intestine 1, 2, because this is metal water. It's already kind of part of the pattern for me. So doing small intestine 2 and 3, for example, is counterintuitive for me, because it's the water and the wood channel, the water and the wood point together, and that's like 2 messages that don't work together. Okay, whereas metal water always does work together. So that's why it's either large intestine 1 and 2, or it's large intestine 3, either small intestine 1 and 2 and small intestine 3. But it's not the same kind of so it's not the same kind of reflection as it's physically reflecting. Okay. Another so-called reflection would be my use of stomach 41 for a lot of structural issues. It has nothing to do with a reflection as much as this is the joint where pretty much all your weight goes on. So it determines your gait. Okay? So I don't think so much, reflecting as much as affecting. So that's why the question of like, can I go through areas that reflect each other is not so easy for me because it's not my native mode of thinking.
You did mention one time, maybe, if I remember correctly, that about the nose and the navel. Was it the
Okay.
eyes or something?
Yeah, so that's a reflection. If you take your center of the nose, so that's a straight Kikoism, wherever she took it from. So if you take your nose, it's in the center of the face, and your navel is at the center of your abdomen. So if you take your nose and we also know that to treat nasal allergies, we can treat around the navel. Okay. And that idea originally came from, the idea was your original immunity comes from through the umbilical cord. Okay. That's your original immunity is being transferred to you through the umbilical cord. And some people, if the umbilical cord is cut too soon, meaning before all the pulsation is over, okay, then they may not have gotten all the IgG, immune components that they needed from mama, and then they have to get it through the milk. So they're at a disadvantage, so to speak. So treating the navel does treat the nose. So then by extension, if you say the nose is the center, then your eyes will end up in stomach 25. And there is some correlation there, not so much in treatment, but people who've had a sharp decline in eyesight, like fairly fast, may show stomach 25 pressure pain. Okay, so there is some reflection there. The next one is much more together, there's a much strong correlation, which is the ears and liver 14. So basically, if I'm bending my head over to touch, for my nose to touch my navel, which obviously I personally cannot do, maybe somebody can, but then my ears supposedly will land on liver 13. Now, liver 13 definitely has a resonance with the ears. That is that's not like stomach 25 in the eyes is kind of like, yeah, sometimes you can say that some people with acute eyesight decline will show stomach 25. Yes, that is true, but it's kind of like it's not like everybody with eye problems, I should check stomach 25. Liver 13 and the ears is very closely correlated, and liver 13 treats the ears. It treats the mastoid, which is related to the ears, and it treats the mastoid, meaning, so therefore it treats originally called deep tissue pain. But I would extend that. I would call that autoimmune disorders. Okay, so I do sometimes add liver 13 for autoimmune disorders. And then your last one in that sequence is at the top of the head. Again, now, not only are you supposed to be able to touch your nose to the navel, now you're supposed to curl further and get do 20 to touch Ren 4. That's obviously a little bit absurd, but but it's an image. So the top of the head and Ren 4 are correlated. Now, this is an image that's, so that image came originally with the idea that when women go through birth and they damage the lower dantian, they're pushing too hard, and then they get postpartum depression. Okay, so something flashes up, and that the treatment for that was actually spleen 6, spleen 9, pericardium 3, or any pericardium point plus lung 5. Very similar to blood pressure treatment, except no under third toe and lung 5 instead. So that, but then when you're also looking at the name of Ren 4 is called Guan Yuan. Okay, the gate, or the to the primary. Okay, and or the checkpoint to the primary. But so Yuan, and I know it's problematic because there's two Yuans and they're written differently. So there's like the Yuan points, which means source. So it's like a fountain. It's a water radical. It's the source of the water. Okay, it's the Yuan of Ren 4 is different. It's like two lines over legs. It's like the head over the legs, meaning primary, not source so much, not the source of things, but what is primary, what's important. Okay, meaning from the head. Okay, so Ren 4 by name also reflects the head as a whole. Okay, so that's that set of reflections. And yes, you can sometimes, you can either use REN4 as a reflex or as a treatment point for head issues. So that does work. That is a fairly close relationship. So of the four, between the nose, the eyes, the ears, and the head, the one that's a little less obvious or less loyal is stomach 25 in the eyes. That one is the one that I personally use the least.
You would think it would be lower, Abby, wouldn't you, for the stomach points?
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing, that, just as I was saying it, but the dogma is stomach 25. I was just thinking that, what about stomach 27 maybe, or something like that. Yeah, I would agree with you that, that if you're doing because if the nose is if this is my navel and this is REN4, then this should be REN6 area, outside REN6. And maybe that's the problem with it. I don't know. The thing is that stomach 26, 27 on both sides already kind of these are large reflection areas, they're large points already, so maybe it was kind of inconvenient. The other thing is, so stomach 25, Tianshu refers to heaven by name, refers to the upper, the axis, the pivot to heaven. So that might have been something that influenced it. I honestly don't know. I will say about stomach 25, because there is something about stomach 25 that makes it so you can't ignore it as a point, even though we may not say it's a huge reflex of lots of things or whatever. Certainly that in the TCM world it's a big point, but if you think about it, it's a point. It's number one, it's or at least it's supposed to be the moo point of the large intestine, so it's a big deal. It's basically, it's not on the dye in the sense of the dye channel that we know it, but if you're looking at the dye as just the horizontal channel, the horizontal channel that of which exists only one in the body, then you talk about kidney 16, stomach 25, spleen 15, gallbladder 26, I guess gallbladder 25, UB20, 52, UB23, and do 4. So just the circle around the navel that as if you cut. Stomach 25 will be on it, and which will make it, it's a very important point. It will be, it's, you can say cutting the body in half, but also it's between the lower jaw and the middle jaw. So there's something about stomach, and by name, it's definitely, it got a very prestigious, high quality name, so to speak. So you can't just ignore it. And yet, if you're diagnosing and if you're palpating abdomen and stuff, as opposed to using abdomen for needling, okay, you're not going to use stomach 25 a huge amount. It's not going to be all that, it's not all that meaningful. So it might have been very convenient to stick the eyes there. And because of that, you can never assume where stomach 25 is, in terms of how far away it is from the navel. If you're looking to name something as stomach 25, it might be maybe only a tsun or so from the navel, and it may be as far as 3 tsun away from the navel. It's a point that's relatively wide. Whereas if you're looking for kidney 16, it's pretty obvious that it's right next to the navel. It doesn't have a lot of wiggle room there. Stomach 25 definitely has a very large wiggle room, in terms of how lateral you want to take it. It's not, quote unquote, 2 tsun. That's, maybe it's supposed to be there, but it often isn't. So whereas spleen 15, for example, I don't look for a lot. I also don't look for 4 tsun. With spleen 15, with a spleen channel, I'm basically looking for the edge of the rectus abdominis. Most people, even if they're very thin, they're going to have a little, especially when they're lying down without tensing, there's going to be you know, I don't know if a pouch necessarily, because if they're thin, but there's a little mound of the abdomen. The edge of that mound is spleen 15 level with the navel. The bottom of the mound is Ren 4. So that's just the way I find these points. Or, you know, I don't for me, Ren 4 is not a measuring point. For me, Ren 4 is the bottom of the mound of the abdomen. Spleen 15 is the side border of that mound. So spleen 15 is much more defined for me, whereas stomach 25 is not. And stomach 25, you know, when they say tutsun out of the navel, there's absolutely no physical reason. You know, they don't say on the border of the blah blah muscle, or, you know, or something like that. There's nothing there. It's just somebody made it up. That's why the stomach channel for me can move a lot more further in, further out. You know, that tutsun is not. I don't feel obligated by it. I would for an exam, but that's a different story.
That's very funny, Avi.
What?
The way you phrase that. I don't feel obligated by it.
No, yeah. No, you know, I don't feel maybe bound is a bit, you know, like some things that they're okay. So for example, for me, the spleen channel on the leg is behind the bone, and it's attached to it's literally behind the bone, because that's what it says. And that's what makes sense for me. I know a lot of people take it much further back. The liver channel, on the other hand, is right on the bone. There's a groove in the bone, and that's where, for me, the liver channel is. Although I know that, for example, Wang Juyi takes the liver channel pretty close to the kidney channel, you know, between the knee and the ankle. I mean, literally, I mean, he takes it behind the spleen channel, which makes no sense because, well, it makes sense for him. But you know, like there's a very clear crossing that's described 8 tsun above the ankle. The liver channel is supposed to cross the spleen channel and go behind it. It's very clearly, if we believe the Ling Shu, if we believe the so-called classical descriptions of the channels, which we don't have to, but you know, so the liver channel is supposed to be in front of the spleen channel and then behind it by the time you get to liver 8. Okay, because that's what it says, 8 and above it crosses. Okay, so so for me, the liver channel doesn't have a lot of now I have options with liver 5. I can look for a hole that it doesn't have to be 5 and above, but it's kind of unusual for a channel to shift to be you know, most channels are pretty precise in terms of the longitudinous of them. You know where that line is. You may say the point is a little different, a little higher, a little lower, something like that, but you kind of know what the line is. With the stomach on the abdomen, for me, I think it's a little bit of it's a mathematical phenomenon. So the actual physical, if I want to get something physical out of it, if I get too stuck with tutsun, I'm not gonna be able to use it very well, because I'm gonna miss it. Because I really think that the tutsun is just they went they went one measure which made sense, you know, aesthetically at least, in terms of the nipple line, and then it moves inwards, and then they just halved it. I don't think they had a clear physical landmark, but I could be wrong, you know, and it could be that the tutsun in this particular case is meant to say it's because this is where all your organs are. Okay, and if you look like at the hands, often you have, you know, so you have the stomach channel, and then 1.5 tsun, and then another 2 tsun out to the spleen. So you have a fairly wide band, which you often do not get like on the arm or even on the leg. You don't get that much distance between channels. So I think if you're looking at what they're saying is that the band of the stomach channel, the band width, I guess, is a minimum of 2 tsun or more between the kidney and the spleen. So there's a minimum of 2 tsuns worth that is stomach channel there. So I think they're really more saying that the stomach channel is the rectus abdominis. And whereas the kidney is the suturing, the edge of it, and the spleen is the edge of it, and I think they're saying that the bulk, the center of it, is the stomach. I don't think the tutsun is what one wants to take. I think what one wants to take is the muscle belly. In the same way that you have because we started with reflections, in the same way that the tibialis anterior, the belly of that muscle is the stomach channel. I know people tend to often, because the second channel is on the lateral edge of the channel, and often people just needle those. And then you say, okay, that's very nice. So show me the difference between your stomach 39 and your stomach 40. And then they get, oh yeah, I guess I guess there's a problem here, because they took stomach 36 through stomach 39 on the same line they would have taken stomach 40. Okay, so and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that for me, it's the tibialis anterior that's the stomach channel. Okay, so in the same way, I can transfer it that the rectus abdominis is the stomach channel. So the tutsun or whatever doesn't really matter. So you see on both in the shin and in the abdomen, which is kind of like the points you use the most and the areas that you're most interested in, have a large width to it. In both cases, the stomach channel is bigger. And by the way, in both cases, there's two branches of the stomach channel passing through the area. It's not just in the leg, there's one branch that goes from stomach 36 downwards. There's one branch that goes down, and then there's another branch that goes from splits from stomach 36 and creates the lateral branch. There's a similar phenomenon from, I believe it's from stomach 12, there's a branch that comes down. Now, it doesn't say that it's wider. It doesn't describe it, but there's two stomach channels that go through the torso from stomach 13 to 30. Okay, not just one. And whether they're overlapping or they're one next to the other, I don't know. But that kind of substantiates the idea that the bandwidth of the stomach channel is wider than the official description of tutsun outside, that it can be 1, 2, 3 tsun outside. I don't know if it helps with correlating it to eye as an eye reflex. I guess if your eyes are wider, it will be further out, or I don't know. If you're cross-eyed, it will be closer to the kidney channel. I don't know. So anyway, that's my spiel about reflections right now.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Anything else?
And I certainly wasn't questioning what you had to say about the
Oh,
stomach
no.
channel. I just thought you phrased it in a charming way.
Well, you have to, this is part of the deal, is that we have these, we have these texts. Some of them are classical and some of them are whatever, from the 1920s or the 1950s or whatever. And, we're in a field where we don't have a Merck manual. We're in a field where we kind of have murkiness, but there's a lot of leeway in this. So sometimes, you kind of go, okay, this is very clear. The channel is very clear. The point location is very clear, the blah, blah, and sometimes you go, well, this is kind of murky. There's a lot of options there. That's what I mean, that we can't always be bound by or obligated by what the text says, because I think in some cases, the text is very clear and very explicit. And I think in some cases the text is just vague and, possibly on purpose. I don't know. It's going to largely depend on what you think the channels are. And if you're someone who thinks the channels are meant to be blood vessels, it's going to be very clear to you, because there's either blood vessel or there isn't. But if you're someone who thinks the channels are the fascial connections and tissue, it's going to be a lot less clear, because you can't see, you can feel the fascia, but you can't see it. It's not like, some things you can see, some things you can't. You can see a blood vessel. You can't see a fascial line. So it all depends on what you think the channel is doing. And I happen to be in the fascial, the idea that the channel, if not the channels, certainly I think the effect of needles is on the fascia. That's my image of it. But not everybody agrees with that. That's not, these are all speculations. There is no clear dogma of what a channel is or what a point is. So, anyway. So, Mary Jo, you had a comment just before.
Forget what I was going to say now. Don't think it was too important anyway.
No problem. All right. Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
All right.
Not here.
All right, Alex. All right. So, well, it's time to end anyway, so that's good. So enjoy the week. Have a good Easter. And
too.
Yes.
I hope the weather is doing better for everyone. And I'll see you guys next week.
Okay. Thank you so kindly, Avi.
Sorry, I was muted. I didn't
Always
know
a
that.
pleasure.
That's okay. It's totally fine.
Yeah, it was fantastic.